Cascadia rips loose, 5 cities, from Victoria and Vancouver to Seattle, Portland, and Sacramento, will be hit all at the same time. As a broken slab of seafloor snaps loose, it will lift a mountain of seawater. When that mountain collapses, it generates a series of elliptical waves, a train of tsunamis that will tear across the Pacific for 12 hours. The West Coast, Alaska, Hawaii, Japan, Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, all will get slammed by Cascadia's waves.
Of course, after the earthquakes in 2011 that we saw in New Zealand and Japan, that footage becomes more and more terrifying. Documentary filmmaker Jerry Thompson was on our show not too long ago with that documentary, and now we're going to chat about his new book, Cascadia's Fault, the deadly earthquake that will devastate North America. How are you?
All right, Jerry.
I'm fine. How are you?
Nice
How
to
do
see
you sleep at night with all this knowledge that you have?
It's really hard sometimes, but I'm trying my best not to make this be all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you look at Japan, and as bad as the death toll was, what is maybe 25 or 28,000, depending on whatever number. But there were like 1.5 million to 1.8 million people living in that area. So that means really that most of the people got through it.
Yeah.
Right.
And so are we. You know, the same thing's going to happen here. We are almost all of us going to get through it. The question is how well we survive the aftermath.
Yeah, well, and I remember, you know, that being a huge discussion point in, you know, around the Japan earthquake was how well prepared they were, and yet how devastating this quake was, regardless of preparation.
How complicated is nature? I mean, they had done this amazing planning. I don't know if you know, one village had a seawall that was 30 feet high to anticipate a 30-foot wave. And the fire department ran out there every month religiously and practiced slamming those big steel gates within a couple of minutes or whatever it was. And they did it. They drilled over and over again. They thought they had anticipated everything. And then they get a 30-foot wave against a 30-foot wall. But what did they forget?
The
Not that they forgot. The ground slumped.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
You know, when the edge of the earth gets buckled under by this subduction,
So
these
it's no
tectonic
longer
plates.
a 30-foot wall.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it's still 30 feet, but the ground had popped out and gone down like this. So when it went boom, boom, the wall is down, the wave came right over the top of it. Who could have thought of that?
And another question everybody's asking, because Japan, being where it is on the earth, is so prone to earthquakes, it is the most prepared place for earthquakes. Why did they not know? So maybe you can elaborate on that and what Japan was prepared for and why they weren't prepared for what happened. Well,
it all goes to the issue of prediction, really, and how well or impossible that task turns out to be. The earthquake history of that part of Japan, they had looked at everything that, and they had great records. I mean, they've been keeping records for like a lot of time, and they tracked every earthquake that had happened in the last 400 years, and nothing bigger than a magnitude 8 or 8.1 had ever happened.
So that's what you prepare for.
And that's exactly what they built the wall for. That's what they were thinking about. But it turns out if you had looked back another 400 years to around 860 or something like that, 865 AD or something like that, there was a much, much bigger earthquake, off the scale type of earthquake that was apparently just the same as this one. They had found evidence that a tsunami had gone way back up in the woods, and they just didn't anticipate that.
As we take that experience and we bring it over close to home on our Cascadia fault, which we saw in the video runs from Vancouver Island all the way down to California, what does this mean for us? What does the historical record show in this area when it comes to earthquake severity?
You could easily say that Cascadia, the fault that runs down the west coast of our part of the world, equals Japan. It's exactly the same thing. We have a fault. It's a big crack in the floor of the ocean where two tectonic plates are running over top of each other. It's about 1,100 kilometers long. It will generate the same magnitude 9 earthquakes. It has already, they've established that there have been about 41 of these things in the last 10,000 years. 19 of the 41 were full margin ruptures, meaning it broke all the way from California to Fino.
And if this is supposed to happen within the next 50 years, do we know when? What do we do if we know it's going to happen? Are we prepared?
Not really. In answer to the question about prediction, no, not really. I mean, in the book, there's a fascinating story about one really successful prediction in China in 1975. There were a bunch of precursors, small earthquakes that led up to a big one, and the Chinese government was determined to try to master the science of prediction, and they had all kinds of people, including your average citizen, all out there looking at how the well water was fluctuating, and the snakes came up out of their dens in the middle of winter, and
right.
all these things happened, and they sort of took a leap. They issued a prediction, and they were successful. They started evacuating about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. 7 o'clock that night, the earthquake came. It was 7 point something, and hundreds of thousands of people's lives were saved by that one prediction, which kind of fired the imagination of scientists all over the world. Japan, the Americans, the Russians, all decided that they were going to do prediction experiments. It's never been duplicated. They've never successfully done that again.
Is this just nature just being unpredictable?
Yes.
I mean, it seems to me when you look at the record and you look at the geological record, it's very easy for us to say, okay, once every 500 years or so, we're going to have one of these massive quakes. But that's a huge discrepancy, once every 500 years or so. I mean, it could be 50, it could be 75, it could be...
In the Cascadia track record, or whatever you want to call it, of earthquakes, it appears, now that we know that there have been about 40 of them, you can sort of look at that, okay, 40 divided by 10,000 years, basically since the last ice age. You can see that it isn't, if you use a number like an average, yes, you come up with 500 or 600 years apart.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really tell you much. What you really want to know is, do they come in clusters? And the answer is yes. Some of these earthquakes, like there can be 3 or 4 of them that are only 200 years apart, and then there's 800 years and no earthquake. So what do you do with that? You know, like, you have to figure out where you are in the cluster.
You still live here. You've been working on this topic matter for how many years now?
Well, I started, my first earthquake assignment was after the Mexico City earthquake in 1985.
Yeah, so
how prepared are you at home?
Fairly well prepared. I mean,
yeah.
You know, I take the advice of a guy that we met in Oregon State University who says, you know, you need to come up with a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. What happens if this earthquake occurs when you're at work? What happens if it happens when you're at home? What happens if you're out playing softball or whatever it is that you do, right? And if you've thought of the 3 things, the 3 plans of how to escape, where you'd meet up the rest of your family, you sit around the dinner table, everybody knows we're all going to go to X, and we're all going to meet there. We know there's going to be no cell phones. We've got earthquake kits in the car. We've taken a first aid course. We've done the best we can. Now stop obsessing about it.
Yeah.
Just get on
because
with
there's
your
nothing
life.
we can do. It's Mother Nature.
Right. That's where we live.
And this place is so great to live, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to be run out of here by some earthquake.
Me neither, man.
well said, Jerry. I appreciate it. Pick up this book. It is a fascinating journey into the study of plate tectonics, earthquake science. You name it. It is authoritative and very interesting to read as well. So thank you so much.
Nice to see you. We're going to take.
We are going to get through this.
We are
going to get through this.
Just be prepared. We're going to take a quick break.